Welcome to a Legendarium special in which we will seek to answer a simple question. Why did people believe in spontaneous combustion? Ironically, the roots of this particular myth date to some of the greatest scientific discoveries of the early modern age. In 1628, scientist William Harvey showed that blood flows around the body in a circuit, with the heart acting as a pump. Before, men of science assumed that the liver converted food into blood and that our organs drank blood the way that plants drink water. At the same time, Harvey made some questionable guesses about the circulation of air in the human body. He knew that both blood and air passed through the lungs, but he insisted that the two substances did not mingle there. Instead, he argued that the lungs merely cooled the blood by churning it, but only the heart could alter blood. During the 1660s, Robert Hooke and Robert Lower, members of the newly founded Royal Society, finally disproved Harvey's incorrect theory about the lungs merely cooling the blood. They did so through a blood-curdling experiment on a dog. They snipped small holes in the dog's lungs to allow air to stream through, and then slipped the nozzle of a bellows into the still-living dog's windpipe. Repeated pumping of the bellows kept the lungs inflated like a windsock in a gale. As a result, the lungs remained stationary for several minutes at a time, neither expanding nor contracting. The dog's heart and other organs worked fine as long as air kept streaming through the lungs despite their being immobilized. The two scientists also saw the dog's blood change color as it moved through its lungs, switching from blue to red. This showed that the lungs did indeed trigger a chemical change in the blood, either infusing it with some substance or removing waste fumes. So suddenly it seemed possible that chemical reactions in blood could make a person catch fire and burn up. During an age when people had to be around open flames all the time, death by burning happened more often and sometimes under mysterious circumstances. In short, this revelation about chemical reactions in the body appeared to explain things that people already knew about. By the early 1700s, French law allowed for spontaneous combustion to be used in the courtroom for murder trials. Jean Millet of Rheims escaped justice for the murder of his wife because of the spontaneous combustion defense, though he spent the rest of his life in a mental asylum. One strange June 20th, 1745 case became a cornerstone for those who would believe in spontaneous combustion. That year, an Italian countess took to regularly bathing in camphorated spirits of wine, a mixture of brandy and camphor. The morning after one such bath, her maid walked into the countess's room to find the bed unslept on. She found soot hung in the air along with a yellow haze of oil on the windows. Later, the maid found the countess's legs standing several feet from the bed, a pile of ashes between them, and her charred skull on the floor. Nothing else seemed amiss save for two melted candles nearby. The theory of spontaneous combustion later became linked to one of the greatest scientific discoveries in medical history, namely oxygen. After chemists isolated oxygen for the first time during the late 1700s, they noticed it played a role in both burning and breathing. With that, many scientists declared that breathing acted as slow combustion, or a constant burning inside the human body. If slow fires burned inside us all the time, why couldn't they suddenly flare up, especially in alcoholics whose organs dripped with gin or rum, at least in the scientific thinking of the time? Some doctors came to believe that raging hot fevers or fiery tempers could also set off the combustible oxygen within us. By 1799, enough alleged incidents of spontaneous combustion entered the books for physicians to make a study of them. They noted that victims tended to be older, inactive, drank often, and an open candle often happened to be at the scene. Temperance advocates who opposed drinking completely used the spontaneous combustion theory to frighten children away from drinking alcohol. Throughout late 1852 and early 1853, Charles Dickens published his latest novel in a serial installment called Bleak House. Inspired by Dickens' time as a court reporter, it followed a decades-long court case that devoured the lives and fortunes of those involved. One of the characters in its pages is Old Crook, an accomplished drunkard who possessed papers which could have brought the court case to an end, and he ready to reveal it to two of his associates. In the book, the two men waited for a meeting with the cantankerous Old Crook, but they noticed black soot swirling through the room and strong-smelling yellow grease on the windowsill. After midnight, the two men entered Crook's shop, crammed with dirty bottles, rags, and bones. When they entered Crook's room, the foul odor inside almost choked them. It took some time to notice that grease stained the walls and ceiling, a bottle of gin sat on the table, and Crook's coat and cap lay on a chair. Finally, they saw a pile of ash on the floor and realized that Crook vanished in spontaneous combustion, and since he could not reveal the critical papers to his associates, Bleak House went on for another 500 pages. Dickens took great pains to render scientific matters like smallpox infections and neurological disorders accurately. So his readers assumed that Dickens did the same in describing spontaneous combustion, which many still believed in. However, the scientists of the time, working hard to debunk old superstitions like mesmerism and clairvoyance, took Dickens to task in print. One of Dickens' old friends, George Lewis, led the effort to prove spontaneous combustion nothing but nonsense. In the next installment, Dickens taunted Lewis by having one of his characters, namely a coroner, say, "These are mysteries we can't account for." Over the next year, Dickens and Lewis started a Victorian-era flame war, writing both private and public letters arguing over spontaneous combustion. Lewis pointed out that while there had been recorded cases, all of them came second-hand or third-hand, not from a direct eyewitness, but from somebody who talked to a witness, or from somebody who talked to somebody who knew the witness. Two of the kingdom's leading men bickered for 10 months until the final installment of Bleak House came out, and then they dropped the matter and reconciled. Yet Lewis would have the last laugh. As he pointed out in his correspondence with Dickens, the human body is 75% water, making the idea of us suddenly catching fire doubtful at best. And so, within a generation, the theory of spontaneous combustion would be swept into the dustbin of history, along with Old Crook. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.